The sky was painted in shades of gold and silver as the twin suns began to set over the quiet colony planet of Asteron. The air was warm, filled with the sound of distant waves hitting the rocks. Evan, a young human engineer, walked along the empty shoreline, carrying a small toolkit in one hand and a tired look on his face. He was fixing broken machines for the colony all day, and the ocean was the only place where he could breathe freely. As he walked, something caught his eye near the edge of the water. At first, he thought it was a piece of metal from a crashed ship, but then he saw movement. It was someone lying on the sand. Half in the water, half out, Evan rushed forward, his boots sinking into the wet ground. The figure was small, delicate, and glowing faintly blue. When he turned her over, his breath stopped. It wasn't a human. Her skin was soft and transparent, showing faint lines of light under the surface. Like tiny rivers of energy, her hair shimmered like silver threads, and her eyes, when they opened, were as deep as the ocean itself. "Hey, can you hear me?" Evan asked softly. The girl blinked slowly, her voice weak and trembling. "Don't touch me." "I can't walk." Her words carried fear, not pain. She tried to move her legs, but they didn't respond. Blue light flickered across her body each time she tried, and she winced as if it hurt her. Evan hesitated, unsure what to do. He looked around. No ships, no signs of anyone else. Just the endless horizon and the whispering waves. "What happened to you?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Her eyes shifted toward the ocean. "The storm. My pod crashed. I must reach the water again. Before the sun set." Her voice broke. "If I don't, I will die." Those words hit him like a knife. She wasn't just weak, she was dying. Evan checked her pulse, but it wasn't normal. It pulsed with faint light in sync with the waves, as if her body and the ocean were connected. He looked back toward the colony, too far, at least 5 kilometers of rough land, and the ocean beside them was already turning darker as the suns dipped lower. He took a deep breath. "All right, I'll help you. We'll get you back into the water." "No," she whispered sharply. "You can't. Human touch is dangerous for my kind. You'll burn." Evan looked at his hands, then at her trembling form. "Then I'll find another way," he said, his voice calm but determined. He took off his jacket and carefully slid it under her body. The fabric hissed faintly as it touched her glowing skin, but didn't burn. She looked at him with disbelief. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you need help," he replied simply. Her lips trembled as if she didn't understand those words. He lifted her slowly, wrapping the jacket around her to shield her from the wind. Her body was lighter than he expected, fragile, like holding a beam of light. The water around them began to glow brighter when he stepped closer to the shore. The color was beautiful and strange, dancing blue lights following his footsteps. The girl's head rested weakly against his shoulder. "My name is Alara," she murmured. Evan nodded. "I'm Evan. We'll get you to the ocean, Alara." She opened her eyes halfway. "You don't understand. If the sun disappears before I touch the deep water again, my core will dry." Evan looked toward the sinking suns. He didn't know what core meant, but he knew she was running out of time. He took a step forward, but the sand was uneven, and his feet sank deep. The weight of both their lives pressed on his shoulders. Still he moved, one step at a time. Determined to reach the glowing waves behind them, the wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of engines far away. Evan looked up, seeing distant shadows in the sky. Ships. Moving slowly across the horizon, Alara noticed too, her body stiffening. "They're coming," she whispered, fear in her tone. "Who?" he asked. Her voice was almost too soft to hear. "Hunters. They want me alive." Evan's heart began to pound. This wasn't just about saving a lost girl. It was something far bigger. He held her tighter and kept walking toward the glowing water. The ocean's color pulsed faster, reacting to her heartbeat. To her fear, when he reached the edge, the waves rose slightly as if greeting her. Alara's breathing became heavier. "Please, don't let them take me." Evan looked at the ships again. Getting closer every second, the suns were half gone now. Painting the sky red and gold, he felt the heat on his skin. But it wasn't just from the suns. Her body was growing warmer, he whispered. "I won't let them." The final rays of sunlight hit the ocean, turning everything into a field of fire and light. Alara's eyes glowed, tears mixing with the blue shimmer of the sea. And for the first time, Evan realized he wasn't just holding an alien. He was holding the key to something the universe had forgotten. Trust. The waves whispered softly as if listening. The world grew quiet except for her weak heartbeat and the distant hum of engines drawing near. The suns disappeared below the horizon, and the last thing Alara said before darkness came was, "Humans should not care. But you do." And in that fading light, Evan promised himself one thing. He would carry her to the ocean no matter the cost. The night had fallen heavy over the world of Asteron. The twin suns had vanished beyond the sea, leaving only a silver moon and the soft glow from the girl's body. Evan's breath came out in short bursts as he carried Alara across the dark beach. His legs sinking in wet sand, every step burned, not from exhaustion, but from the strange heat coming from her skin. Alara's voice trembled with pain. "You shouldn't carry me. Your body can't handle the radiation." Evan just shook his head, his jaw tight. "I've handled worse," he said. Though he knew that was a lie, his palms were red, his arms shaking. But he didn't stop, he couldn't. The ocean was close, yet still far. The mercenary ships in the sky had disappeared behind the cliffs, but their faint red lights blinked now and then. Searching, Evan needed to move before they found them. He could feel the sand cooling as night took over. The air sharp and quiet except for Alara's shallow breathing. Her head rested against his shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would a human risk this? You don't even know me." Evan kept walking, his boots scraping against the stones. "Maybe because you needed help." "That's not logical," she said weakly. "My kind doesn't help others. Not unless there's a reason." He looked down at her glowing face and smiled faintly. "Then maybe that's why you needed to meet a human." Alara closed her eyes. Silent, her world and his were too different. Where she came from, kindness was weakness, but here, this strange human kept walking through pain for a life that wasn't his own. The sound of engines echoed again, closer this time. Evan ducked behind an old, rusted cargo rover half buried in sand. He crouched low, holding Alara gently. Her glow dimmed as she tried to hide it, covering herself with part of his jacket. They waited, listening. A bright beam of light swept across the beach, scanning. Evan held his breath, his heart thudding so loudly he was sure they'd hear it. After a long moment, the sound faded into the distance. Alara looked up, her voice soft but urgent. "They won't stop. They hunt for the living ones from my ship. They want our blood, our energy, our—" She stopped, her eyes filled with fear. Evan's face hardened. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you." He stood up again, ignoring the pain in his arms, and began to walk inland. Toward a rocky trail leading to the cliffs, Alara watched him, confused. "You're going the wrong way." "No," he said. "If I go across the cliffs, they won't track us by heat." Her kind didn't understand such human stubbornness. She just stared at him as he climbed the jagged rocks. The wind cutting against his face, halfway up he slipped, his knee hitting a stone, but he didn't fall. He tightened his grip on her. The stars above shimmered in the clear alien sky. Every step was heavier than the last, but Evan's mind repeated one thought over and over. "She's alive because of me. She stays alive because of me." When they reached a small cave in the cliffside, he gently laid her down. The cave walls glowed faintly from her light. Evan leaned against the stone, gasping for air. His hands were burned from carrying her, small blisters forming where his skin had touched hers. Alara saw this and reached out, hesitant. "You're hurt." He smiled weakly. "Just a little." She placed her glowing hand over his burns, and for a moment the pain eased. The light from her skin spread across his fingers, cold and warm at the same time. When she pulled back, the burns were faintly healed. He stared at his hands, amazed. "How did you—" She shook her head. "It's not something we're supposed to do. It drains me." Her breathing grew heavier again. Outside, thunder rolled. Storm clouds gathered over the sea. Lightning flashing in the distance, Evan looked out from the cave, seeing the waves rising, the wind growing stronger. They were safe from the mercenaries for now, but the storm was coming. He turned to her. "We'll move again when it clears." Alara's voice was fading. "If I don't reach the deep ocean soon, my core will collapse." Evan walked closer, crouching beside her. "Then I'll carry you through the storm if I have to." She looked into his eyes, confused. "You don't even know what I am." Evan smiled slightly. "Doesn't matter, I know what you're not. You're not my enemy." Alara blinked slowly, her silver lashes trembling. No one had ever said words like that to her before. In her world, emotion was weakness, kindness was forbidden. Yet here, this human risked his life just to keep a stranger breathing. Lightning struck the sea, lighting up the cave for a brief moment. In that flash, Alara saw something on Evan's wrist, a small charm made of metal. Shaped like a seashell, he caught her looking. "It was my sister's," he said quietly. "She used to say the ocean keeps secrets for those who listen." Alara smiled faintly, her eyes glowing brighter. "Then maybe the ocean will listen to you too." He reached out and gently covered her with his jacket again. "You rest now," he said. "Tomorrow I'll get you there. I promise." Her voice came out like a whisper. "A human promise." "Does it mean something?" Evan looked at her, his eyes tired but certain. "It means I won't stop until it's done." The storm raged outside, waves crashing against the cliffs. The cave trembled, but Evan didn't move from her side. He stayed awake, guarding her. Even when his eyes burned with exhaustion, the mercenaries would return, and the storm would make the path harder. But his promise echoed in the darkness, strong, steady, human, and somewhere far below, in the deep unseen ocean, something ancient stirred, glowing faintly in answer. The morning came with a storm of dust and fire. When Evan opened his eyes, the cave was shaking from the wind outside. Fine sand poured in from the cracks above, covering his boots and tools. The air was dry, sharp, and full of static energy. Alara was still lying beside him, her glow dim like a dying flame. Evan touched her shoulder gently. "Alara, wake up." Her eyes flickered open, and for a moment he saw panic, then calm. "I can't feel the water," she whispered, her voice almost gone. "The air burns me." Evan looked toward the opening of the cave. The entire world outside had turned red and brown. A sandstorm was raging across the desert, hiding everything, even the horizon. He pulled out a small oxygen mask from his pack and covered her face with it. "You'll be okay," he said, trying to sound confident. Alara looked at him weakly. "You humans always say that." "Even when you're not sure," he smiled faintly. "Yeah. Maybe that's what keeps us alive." They didn't have much time. The mercenary ships would start searching again once the storm cleared, and the ocean, their only hope, was still miles away. Evan wrapped his jacket around Alara and lifted her once more. His muscles screamed from pain. His skin burned from the strange energy coming off her body. But he held on, stepping out into the storm. The wind hit him like knives, cutting across his face and arms. He could barely see more than a few meters ahead, but he kept moving, one step at a time. Alara's voice trembled. "You should leave me, human. The hunters won't stop because of one life." Evan leaned his head down, shouting over the wind, "And I won't stop because of fear." She turned her head slightly, her glowing eyes studying him. "You're not logical." "Good," he said through gritted teeth. "Logic doesn't save people." Lightning flashed across the storm, not from the sky, but from the ground somewhere behind them. Metal engines roared through the curtain of sand. Red lights appeared, moving fast. The mercenary drones had found them. Evan cursed under his breath and started running. The ground shook under his boots, and the wind tore at his jacket. He ducked behind a ridge of rock. Pressing Alara close, the drones passed overhead, their scanners glowing like burning eyes. Alara reached out a hand, and the air around her shimmered blue for a second. The scanners flickered, confused, their lights blinking erratically. "What did you do?" Evan whispered. "Distracted them," she said, her voice weak. "But I can't do it again soon." The drones turned back. Searching the ground, Evan used the moment to slip away. Climbing down the far side of the rocks, the storm roared louder, throwing waves of sand in every direction. Each gust felt like a wall, pushing against him, but he didn't stop. As they moved deeper into the wasteland, the storm began to fade. The air cleared just enough for the sky to show through. A dark orange filled with ships in the distance. Evan stopped to catch his breath. Placing Alara gently on the ground, her eyes open, dim but calm. "You're hurting yourself." Evan wiped the dust from his face. "It's fine. I've carried heavier things." "Not like me," she said softly. "I'm poison to you." He looked at his blistered hands and smiled. "Then I'll take the poison as long as you live." Alara stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she said quietly, "You humans are strange. Your strength comes from pain, your kindness from loss." Evan nodded slowly. "Maybe that's true." Far ahead, the land sloped downward into a vast canyon, and beyond it, the faint shimmer of blue, the ocean. Evan felt his chest tighten with hope. But between them and the sea stretched miles of cracked ground and broken ruins, the remains of an old human colony. Twisted metal towers and shattered domes stood like ghosts under the stormy sky. He started walking toward the ruins as they entered. The wind howled through broken walls, making eerie, hollow sounds. Signs written in faded English still hung on the walls. Humanity's Hope, Research Station. Evan stopped. Staring at the name, it was one of the first colonies. Built long before his time, abandoned after the Great Drought. Alara's eyes moved slowly across the ruins. Your kind tried to live everywhere, even in places that hated you. Yeah, Evan said softly. We don't know how to quit. They walked through the fallen structures until they reached what looked like a crashed landing pad. Alara pointed weakly. The ocean. It's not far. But before Evan could answer, a shadow passed over them. He looked up. One of the mercenary ships was descending, its engines glowing red. The ground shook as the ship landed a few hundred meters away. Drones began to spread out, scanning the area. Evan picked Alara up again and ran toward the cliffs beyond the ruins. Blaster fire cut through the dust, hitting the walls near him. He ducked and slid behind a fallen tower. Breathing hard, Alara's hand clutched his arm. Her voice desperate. You can't fight them. He looked at her, sweat and dust covering his face. I don't need to fight them. I just need to outrun them. He darted out again, moving from cover to cover, the sound of explosions following behind. Every muscle in his body screamed, every breath burned, but he didn't stop. The ocean's light shimmered closer now, reflecting off the metal ruins. Alara's glow pulsed in rhythm with it, faint but alive. Evan could feel her heartbeat through his arms, fragile but steady. They were almost there behind them. The ship's engines roared to full power. Evan looked over his shoulder and whispered, Hold on. He jumped over a ridge of stone. Sliding down toward the beach below, the world blurred around him. Sand, light wind and pain all mixed together. He landed hard, rolling, still holding her close. When he looked up, he saw the ocean, wide, glowing, endless. Alara opened her eyes, tears shining. We made it, Evan smiled faintly. Not yet, but we will. Above them, thunder cracked, and a red beam of light sliced across the sand. The hunters had seen them again. Evan gritted his teeth, pulling her to her feet. The chase wasn't over, and it had only just begun. The first drops of rain fell like sparks against the sand. The sky above Asteron turned dark, filled with rolling thunder and streaks of blue lightning that lit the horizon like veins of fire. Evan could barely see the ocean through the heavy sheets of rain. He was soaked, shivering, but he didn't stop. His arms locked around Alara's fragile body. Behind them, the sound of engines roared again. Deep and metallic, the mercenaries were closing in fast. Evan's boots slipped on the wet rocks as he climbed higher up the cliff, trying to find cover. Alara's eyes glowed faintly in the storm, her voice weak but calm. You should have left me. They won't stop until I'm dead. Evan gritted his teeth. Then I'll make sure they fail. Lightning struck the sand just meters away, exploding in a wave of heat and glass shards. Evan fell to his knees, shielding Alara with his body. She looked up at the storm, her lips trembling. The sky is angry. He laughed softly through the pain. It's just weather. She shook her head. No. It's the planet, it feels fear. Her words sent a chill down his spine. He had heard old stories, that some planets were alive, that their oceans could feel. Maybe Asteron was one of them. The storm raged louder, whines howling like voices from another world. Evan found a broken rover half buried in the mud and pulled Alara inside. It was cramped and smelled like rust and decay, but it kept the rain away. He laid her on the seat, checking her breathing. Her glow flickered weaker than ever. Her skin looked almost transparent now, veins of light barely pulsing beneath. Stay with me, he whispered. She smiled faintly, her eyes half closed. Your hands? They're shaking. He glanced down. They were, from exhaustion and cold. He wiped his face and forced a smile. I've had worse days. Alara reached up weakly, touching his wrist. The moment her fingers brushed his skin, he felt a rush of images, water stretching forever, floating cities of glass, creatures singing through glowing coral. He gasped, pulling back. What was that? She looked at him with tired eyes. My memories. You saw them because I wanted you to understand. He sat there, staring at her in awe. She continued softly. My people live deep below the ocean. We don't walk the land. We were never meant to. But we came here to study your kind. Evan frowned. Study us? Why? Because humans change things, she whispered. Your emotions affect the world around you. Even your machines respond to your feelings. She coughed, light spilling from her lips like mist. We wanted to understand that, but they found us. Evan clenched his fists. The mercenaries. Alara nodded slowly. They attacked our ship, we crashed. I was the only one who escaped. Her breathing grew rougher. My body can't survive without the deep water. My core will dry soon. Evan looked around desperately. The rover was falling apart, but he spotted a half-functional comm device in the corner. He crawled toward it, checking the circuits. The battery was almost dead, but if he rerouted power from his suit, maybe he could send a short signal. He tore the cable from his arm module and connected it to the old system, sparks flying. Come on, work, he muttered. Alara watched him silently, her eyes soft. Even when the world tries to kill you, you fight it. He smiled weakly. That's kind of our thing. The screen flickered to life. Static buzzing through the air. Evan typed in emergency codes, trying to reach any human ship nearby. Alara sat up slightly, her voice trembling. They'll hear it too. I know, he said. But if someone's close, we need help. He hit the transmit key, and a faint pulse of light shot into the storming sky. For a brief second, the rain seemed to freeze in the air, glowing blue. Then the device shut down, the power gone. Evan sighed, leaning back against the metal wall. Signal sent. Maybe someone will hear it. Alara looked out the broken window toward the sea. Someone will, she said softly. The ocean listens. The storm outside grew worse. Waves crashed against the cliffs, throwing mist into the air. Evan could feel the vibrations under the ground, deep, powerful, alive. Alara's body responded to it, glowing brighter, her veins pulsing in rhythm with the thunder. She closed her eyes and whispered words in her own language, soft, melodic, and ancient. The air inside the rover began to shimmer faintly. Like underwater light, Evan stared in disbelief. What are you doing? I'm calling to the deep, she said weakly. They might still hear me. He leaned closer. Who? My people, she breathed. If they survive the crash, they'll come. Then her head fell back, her glow fading again. Evan caught her before she could slide to the floor. Her body was cold, her skin like glass. Stay with me, Alara, he said, shaking her gently. Don't fade out on me now. Her lips moved slowly. You sent your signal, now I send mine. Her eyes opened one last time, glowing bright blue. Outside, the ocean answered. Waves rose higher. Lightning flashed white instead of red. The entire coastline seemed to pulse with light. For a moment, Evan forgot the danger. He stared out the window as the sea lit up like a living creature. Then he heard it, the sharp hum of an engine that didn't belong to the storm. He looked up, eyes wide. A shadow passed through the clouds among a large ship. Red lights flashing, moving toward their location. Alara whispered faintly. They heard it too. Evan's jaw tightened. Yeah, but not the ones we wanted. The storm screamed louder as the ship descended through the clouds. Evan grabbed his gear and lifted Alara again. We have to move, he said. Now. Rain hit his face like shards of glass as he stepped out into the storm once more. The signal was sent, and now the hunt had begun again. The storm was gone by morning, leaving behind silence. The beach was covered in broken metal, twisted glass and ash from the night before. Evan's footsteps pressed into the wet sand as he carried Alara down the last slope toward the sea. The ocean stretched ahead. Glowing faintly blue beneath the clouds, he could almost taste freedom. But behind them, engines roared again, breaking the fragile peace. Alara stirred weakly in his arms, her voice rough. They're here. Evan looked back. A black ship hovered above the dunes, its red lights flashing through the mist. Dozens of drones flew out from its belly, scanning the ground with red beams. They must have tracked my signal, he muttered. Alara's eyes dimmed with guilt. And mine. Evan laid her down behind a rock and pulled out his small blaster. The weapon was old, scratched, and barely functional. He checked the battery on half power, not enough for a fight. He sighed. Guess we'll have to be clever instead. Alara looked at him, confused. You can't win. They outnumber you. Evan gave a tired smile. I don't have to win. I just have to keep you safe. The drones spread across the coast like shadows, their scanners humming softly. Evan crouched low, his heart pounding. He waited until one came close and then fired. The blast hit perfectly, sending sparks across the sand, but it also gave away his position. The others turned instantly. Red beams sweeping toward him. He grabbed Alara and ran. Blaster fire tore through the air. Hitting rocks and sand around them, Alara gasped. "Evan, stop, you'll die," he shouted over the noise. "Not today." He slid behind another boulder as an explosion shook the ground. The shockwave sent sand flying, cutting into his face. He tasted blood, but he didn't care. The black ship descended lower. A metallic voice boomed from its speakers. "Surrender the Lumian specimen, and you may live." Evan tightened his grip on the blaster. "Not happening." Alara looked up at him. Tears in her glowing eyes. "Why do you do this? Your species always fights for itself." He looked at her, his voice soft but strong. "Maybe that's what you've been told. But not all of us are like that." She stared at him for a long second. Then something changed in her expression, disbelief turning to respect. Her trembling hand reached for his chest, her fingertips brushing his heart. "Your pulse," she whispered. "It's strong even when you're afraid." He smiled faintly. "Fear keeps me moving." Suddenly a drone swooped down, firing a shot that hit the rock above them. The blast knocked Evan to the ground. Pain shot through his shoulder. Alara screamed, her glow flaring bright blue. The ocean behind them responded, waves rising unnaturally high. Glowing brighter with every second, the light spread across the beach like liquid fire. The mercenary ship adjusted course, confused by the sudden energy surge. Evan forced himself up, blood dripping from his arm. He grabbed Alara's hand. "Come on, the water's reacting to you." She looked at the glowing waves, her eyes wide. "It's calling me." "Then go," he said. "That's where you belong." But before she could move, several drones surrounded them. Red lights circled like predators, ready to strike. A human voice came through the ship's comms this time, cold and sharp. "Step away from the Lumian, human, or we'll vaporize you both." Evan stood still, his chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. Alara whispered, "Please, don't fight them. They'll kill you." He glanced at her, his expression calm. "Kindness isn't kindness if it's easy." He took a step forward, placing himself between Alara and the drones. The mercenaries hesitated. The glowing ocean reflected off his battered face and burned hands. He raised his voice, shouting at the ship, "You call yourselves hunters, but you're cowards and afraid of something weaker than you." The voice replied coldly, "Weakness is a disease, human, and we cure it." The drones fired. Evan moved fast, throwing himself over Alara, taking the hit across his back. The energy burned through his armor, but he didn't let go. He fell to his knees, coughing. Alara's glow flared again, brighter than before. The ocean roared in response, waves rising higher. Wind howling across the beach. The nearest drone malfunctioned, its circuits overloading from the sudden energy surge. Lightning struck the water, and for the first time, Evan saw shapes under the waves, huge glowing forms moving closer, ancient and alive. Alara's voice echoed in the wind. "They're here." The mercenary ship began to shake as the sea rose against it. Evan could barely see through the storm of light and water. He felt Alara's hand on his cheek, her touch soft and cold. "You've done enough," she whispered. "Rest now." He shook his head weakly. "Not until you're safe." Her eyes glowed brighter, tears mixing with the rain. "You don't understand. Humans aren't supposed to enter the sacred sea." He smiled faintly, his voice barely a whisper. "Then I guess I'm breaking another rule." The waves crashed, swallowing the beach. The mercenary ship tilted, alarms blaring. One final blast of light erupted from the water, engulfing everything in a glowing storm. When the light faded, the ship was gone. Only the sound of the ocean remained, calm and endless again. Evan lay on the wet sand, his body trembling. Alara knelt beside him, her hands glowing as she tried to heal his wounds. He looked up at her through heavy eyes. "You made it to the ocean," she nodded, tears glowing on her cheeks. "Because you carried me," he smiled weakly, the edges of his vision fading. "I told you," he whispered, "I'd get you there." As he slipped into unconsciousness, the ocean shimmered brighter than ever, and from the depths a soft song rose, ancient. Mournful and full of life, it was the sound of a world remembering kindness. The sound of waves filled the air like a heartbeat, slow and endless. When Evan opened his eyes, the world around him was no longer red or broken. Everything shimmered with a soft blue glow, as if the ocean itself was breathing. He felt weightless, suspended between sea and sky. His wounds no longer burned, but his body felt weak, almost transparent. Alara knelt beside him in the shallow water, her glow now bright and alive. Her silver hair floated around her like threads of light, her eyes glowing with calm power. She looked stronger than before, her body fully healed by the touch of the ocean. "Evan," she whispered, her voice soft as the tide. "You're alive." He tried to smile, his voice barely a whisper. "Told you." "I'm hard to kill," she laughed weakly. But there were tears in her eyes. The sea responded to her emotions. Glowing brighter each time she breathed, behind her the surface rippled, and massive shapes began to rise from the depths. At first Evan thought they were shadows, but then he realized they were alive. Gigantic creatures made of light and water, moving like living storms beneath the surface. Alara turned toward them, her expression full of awe and fear. "My people," she said. The ocean vibrated, the waves moving in rhythm with her voice. A deep hum echoed through the air. Not a sound, but a feeling. Evan could sense it in his chest. A pulse that connected everything around them. From the water, figures emerged. Tall, graceful beings of light, they had no solid form, only outlines of shimmering energy and flowing currents. Their eyes glowed with colors that shifted like the ocean floor. One of them stepped forward, its voice echoing through the waves. "Alara of the deep." "You have returned," Alara bowed her head. "I have, and I brought someone with me." The beings turned their glowing faces toward Evan. The air grew colder, heavier. "This is a human," the leader said. "He should not be here." Evan tried to sit up. Coughing, "You're welcome," he muttered. Alara moved closer to him protectively. "He saved my life. He carried me to the ocean when I could not walk." Another of the beings stepped forward, its voice like distant thunder. "He trespassed upon the sacred tide. Our law forbids this." The ocean's glow dimmed slightly. Evan looked up at them, his strength fading but his spirit still burning. "Law or not," he said quietly, "I didn't save her for a reward. I saved her because she needed someone." Alara looked back at him. Emotion trembling in her eyes, the beings murmured among themselves, their voices rising and falling like waves. Finally, the leader spoke again. "You risked your life for another species, knowing nothing of her world." Evan nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what humans do sometimes." A pause followed, long and heavy. Then the ocean began to glow brighter again. The leader raised a hand and the waves parted slightly, forming a circle around them. "Bring him to the heart," it said. "Let the ocean decide." Alara helped Evan to his feet. The water was warm now, almost alive, carrying them forward gently. As they reached the deeper part of the sea, the light beneath them turned golden. Evan could feel the vibrations growing stronger, resonating with his heartbeat. Alara whispered, "You're part of it now. The ocean knows you." The golden light surrounded them completely. Evan saw flashes of memory, not his own, but Alara's. Her people's history played before his eyes like moving water. Wars fought beneath the sea, cities built of coral and crystal, and a final collapse when the oceans began to die. He saw Alara's kind trying to reach the stars. Searching for help, he saw their ship crash on Asteron, their last hope fading into silence. When the visions ended, he was gasping, his body glowing faintly with the same blue light as the sea. Alara watched him with wide eyes. "You're connected now," she said. "The ocean accepted you," Evan blinked. "Accepted me for what?" "To carry the memory of what humanity once was," she replied. "Kind, fearless, willing to give without reason." The ocean around them began to rise again. From the deep, streams of light shot upward, forming spirals that reached the sky. A soft humming filled the air, echoing through the horizon. It wasn't a storm this time. It was life returning. The water that had once been gray and lifeless was now full of light and motion. Tiny, glowing creatures swam beneath the surface. Reborn from the deep, the beings of light stood taller, their voices soft and reverent. "The ocean has spoken," said the leader, "the human lives, and the sea remembers him." Alara turned toward Evan, her voice trembling. "You saved more than me. You saved us all." He smiled weakly. "Guess I'm better at repairs than I thought." Alara knelt beside him, pressing her forehead to his. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You carried me to the ocean, but you also carried something greater. Hope." Evan felt warmth spreading through him. The pain faded, replaced by peace. The ocean pulsed one final time, a deep, resonant beat that shook the air. Then everything grew still, silent, calm. The glowing beings began to fade, merging back into the waves. The sea turned clear and bright again, stretching endlessly beneath the rising suns. Alara stood beside him, looking out at the horizon. The wind caught her hair, sending silver light dancing across the water. She smiled, her voice soft and full of wonder. The ocean lives again. Evan nodded slowly. Then so do we. But somewhere behind them, in the shadow of the cliffs, a red light flickered, a signal from the wreckage. The mercenaries were not all gone, and the ocean, though alive, was not yet safe. The twin suns rose slowly over Asteron, turning the waves into rivers of gold. The air was calm, the storm long gone, and for the first time in years the ocean sang. A deep hum rolled across the surface, soft and beautiful, echoing through the sky. Evan stood on the edge of a floating platform built from old colony metal. Staring at the endless blue, his wounds had healed, though faint silver scars still traced his arms like reminders of light. Alara stood beside him, her reflection shimmering on the water's surface. Her legs, once useless, now moved with grace, her body fully restored by the ocean. She wore a robe made of woven sea silk, glowing faintly under the morning light. The ocean itself seemed alive around her, waves bending slightly when she moved. She turned to Evan, her voice calm yet filled with warmth. "It's peaceful now." Evan nodded, his eyes distant. "Yeah, peaceful. And strange." Alara tilted her head, her silver hair catching the sunlight. "Strange?" He smiled faintly. "A week ago I was just an engineer fixing broken pipes. Now I'm talking to ocean spirits," she laughed softly, the sound blending with the sea breeze. "You fixed something greater than machines. Evan, you fixed faith beneath them." The ocean glowed gently, alive with motion. Creatures of light swam beneath the waves, living proof that life had returned to the deep. The once dead coral now shimmered with color, blooming in spirals that reached toward the surface. Alara placed her hand on the water, and it rippled like glass, revealing faint shapes far below. Her people, the Lumians, had begun rebuilding their cities beneath the sea. Towering pillars of light rose from the ocean floor, pulsing with a heartbeat that matched the rhythm of the waves. "They're rebuilding," Evan said quietly. Alara nodded. "And they will remember. They will sing of the human who carried one of their own." He frowned slightly. "You don't need to make stories about me," she smiled. "It's not a story, it's truth. You showed us that kindness is not weakness, that compassion can shape destiny." The wind blew softly, carrying the scent of salt and new beginnings. Evan walked closer to the water's edge, his boots leaving faint prints on the wet platform. He looked down, and in the reflection he saw his own face, tired, but peaceful. Alara stepped beside him, holding a small crystal pendant in her hand. It glowed with a soft blue light pulsing gently. She held it out to him. "This is part of my core," she said. "It carries my heartbeat and the memory of the sea." Evan hesitated. "You don't have to." "I want to," she said firmly. "It will keep you connected wherever you go." He took it slowly, feeling the warmth of the crystal in his palm. The light inside it pulsed once, twice, then settled, syncing with his own heartbeat. He looked up at her, his voice low. "What happens now?" Alara looked toward the horizon where the twin suns met the glowing water. "My people will guard the ocean again, and your kind will know that this world is no longer dying." Evan sighed. "And me?" She smiled softly. "You'll go home, but not the same." He stared out at the ocean. Silent, he thought of the storm, the chase, the fire, and the way Alara had looked when she couldn't walk. He thought of how fragile life was, and how powerful one small act could be. Alara reached out and touched his hand. "Your kindness carried me to the ocean, but it also carried a message across the stars." He turned to her. "What message?" She smiled gently. "That humanity still remembers how to care." The air shimmered as a silver vessel rose from the horizon, the human rescue ship that had followed the beacon. Its engines hummed softly, casting waves of light across the sea. Evan watched as it descended slowly toward the platform. He turned to Alara one last time, his heart heavy but full. "So this is goodbye," he said quietly. Alara nodded, her eyes glowing faintly. "For now, but our worlds are not separate anymore." She stepped closer, placing her hand on his chest right over his heart. "The ocean will remember you, Evan. Every tide that touches this world will carry your name." He smiled, trying to hold back emotion. That's a lot of responsibility for a mechanic. Alara laughed softly. You're more than that now. She stepped back slowly as the wind picked up, waves sparkling around her feet. Her voice echoed softly, blending with the rhythm of the sea. Goodbye, human of kindness. Evan turned toward the ship as its door opened. A crew member waved, shouting through the wind. We thought you were dead. He smiled faintly. Almost, he replied. But someone carried me back too. He climbed aboard, holding the glowing crystal close to his heart. As the ship rose higher, he looked down one last time. The ocean below shimmered like living glass. Alara stood on the shore, her figure shining like silver flame. As the ship ascended into the morning sky, the sea began to sing again. It wasn't just the sound of water, it was a melody, a song filled with memory and light. It carried across the waves, through the wind, through the air, a song of life, of hope, and of one human's promise. And as the stars faded into daylight, the narrator's voice echoed softly. In a galaxy full of logic and war, one act of kindness reminded the universe what it meant to be human. The waves shimmered, the suns rose higher, and the song of the sea continued forever.